North Korea has been moving missiles. According to South Korea's defense minister, missiles with considerable range have been moved to its east coast. Now, this report comes hours after North Korea's military warned that it had been authorized to attack the U.S. using smaller, lighter nuclear weapons. This could be a claim that North Korea has improved its nuclear technology, or just that they're bluffing. Joining us to discuss this is Tim Sharrock, a journalist who's been covering North Korea for over 30 years. Tim, thanks for joining us. I want to ask you how much of North Korea's recent threats, which we keep hearing about on the media and everywhere really, are really just rhetorical.
Well, they're rhetorical because an attack by North Korea on the United States would be national suicide for North Korea. On the other hand, they're sounding off in a real way about what they consider to be a real threat to themselves and what they will do about it. And so it's a very serious situation, but I would not say that we're in imminent danger of going into a war at this time.
Right, and so, the United States has, done a variety of steps. I think last week they sent the fighters over, the jets, the bombers, I guess is what they're called, and then more recently they've been trying to assert their power. What do you make of where this is headed? I mean, a lot of people talk about North Korea as a threat. North Korea makes a lot of threats, as we've seen this week, but have they ever successfully actually launched a long-range missile?
They have launched and tested missiles of different variety some of these tests have worked, some have not. They do have the capability to fire long-range missiles. The key question is whether they have the capability to put a nuclear device, weaponized device, on a missile and shoot it at the United States. And it's pretty much a consensus that they do not have that capability. So when they say they're about to launch a nuclear attack, that is definitely rhetoric because they do not have that capability.
Right.
But they have the capability to do a lot of damage in South Korea against people in South Korea as well as U.S. forces there.
Right, and that's perhaps why U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel is saying that we need to be taking these threats seriously, not just the ones that were made to Guam and to South Korea, but also to the U.S. mainland.
Well, that's right, but that's where I think this rhetoric comes in because they do not have missiles at this time to hit the U.S. mainland, and I think that we have to look at what the United States is saying as well, with lots of grains of salt. You have to remember when you send a B-52 that's nuclear capable and a B-2 from Missouri that's nuclear capable, you're carrying out, in effect, you're showing them that this is a mock nuclear strike. We're ready to do this. And, that's a pretty dangerous signal to say, and I think that's a pretty dangerous game for the Obama administration to be playing at this time. And it's very important to look at what the White House has been saying in the last 36 hours, which is basically, we want to tone this down. We want to pull back. The Wall Street Journal has a very good story today saying, U.S. dials back on Korean show of force. They're afraid this is going to lead into a confrontation and may have overstepped their bounds, I think.
Right, and it would be, I think, an unnecessary one at that. Tim, also coming out of North Korea, hackers claiming to be from Anonymous apparently broke into at least 2 of North Korea's government-run online sites today. Now, one picture that was posted today showed Kim Jong-un's face with a pig-like snout and drawing of Mickey Mouse on his chest. The text under the picture reads, "Threatening world peace with nuclear weapons, wasting money while his people starve to death." What do you make of this, Tim? Any thoughts on who could be behind this, if not Anonymous, and what the significance is to you?
No, I don't really have much thoughts on what Anonymous is doing, if they in fact did that. I think it's much more important to talk about what's actually going on between the United States and North Korea. This is no joke. This is not this should not be taken lightly, what's going on. And I think Americans should look very carefully at what our government has been doing. This is a real show of force. The United States is building up its military forces in Asia in a way we have not seen since the Vietnam War.
Right.
And why this is a little bit unclear. What exactly the motivation and aim of it? They say it's to build up our security and to support our allies. But this is unprecedented growth since about 40 years, and so there is policies going on that I don't think the United States government is being very clear with the American people about.
Right, and I think you're right to point that out, but I'm curious as to why it seems like you don't want to necessarily comment, or it almost seems like you think it's not a big deal that Anonymous has done this. The only reason I ask is because, these DDoS attacks we've seen in the past have actually made certain conflicts between the U.S. and other countries. In the Arab world, for example, they do interject themselves and try and disrupt, and that can be, from perhaps North Korea's perspective, to be seen as aggression, no?
Oh, I think it would be. I think that they would obviously see this as some kind of attack. I mean, about a week ago, it was kind of becoming a crisis. One day, all the North Korean websites, their official news websites, KCNA, their official news operation, those websites shut down, could not be reached from outside of Korea. And there was a lot of, and the North Koreans said later that they had been the victim of a hackers attack. They did not identify any certain country, but they made it very clear that it was probably coming from the United States.
Right.
And, we know very well that the U.S. and the Cyber Command, the National Security Agency, have the capability to do this kind of attack.
Right,
So,
and not just the capability, there's also a precedent, I would argue, in Iran, as I think you're probably referring to. But Tim, I really appreciate you joining us, taking the time to join us. Thanks so much. And remember, for those of you watching, don't miss our segment at 3:30 today, where we will be looking into Japan's military buildup over the past few years.